In business today, 3 things to know. First, meet the new leader. Republicans move to fill the newly empty seat of majority leader, who they picked to replace Eric Cantor, and what that selection means for businesses and immigration reform. Then, gas pains. The price at the pump is expected to soar. Is it legitimate or just speculative hype over Iraq? And drone hack attack. How criminals are using drones to steal your personal information. Look out below. Arisexchange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Congressional Republicans have picked a new leader, a position that opened up after Eric Cantor suffered a stunning defeat. Kevin McCarthy, promoted from whip to majority leader by the GOP. That makes him the second most powerful person in the House. The new majority leader spoke about the challenges he sees facing the country. Take a listen.
We're struggling with a stagnant economy, a failed health care law, and so many are living paycheck to paycheck. They're looking for individuals that put people before politics. I'll make one promise. I will work every single day to make sure this conference has the courage to lead with the wisdom to listen. And we'll turn this country around.
The GOP also tapped a new majority whip. Eric Ham is with Global Political Solutions on what this may mean for the GOP agenda. Eric, welcome to Arisexchange.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Who is Kevin McCarthy?
Well, he's from California. He's a prolific fundraiser, and he was known as Eric Cantor's right-hand man. So most people think that he's the guy for the job. It was pretty much a cakewalk for him, particularly when very well-known Congressmen Jeb Hensarling and Pete Sessions decided to step out. And once they did, it was pretty much his to lose, and he certainly didn't lose it.
If he was Eric Cantor's right-hand man and the GOP thinks there was any sort of message in Cantor losing, did they get any message?
That's interesting because I believe that McCarthy is very much a clone in the sense that he came in with the Tea Party that solidified the House for the GOP in 2010. And he's been seen as, I think, partly an establishment candidate, but he does have support among the Tea Party. So when he talks about working every day, he's going to be working very hard every day just to make sure that he keeps his caucus in line.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that regarding the Tea Party. He is sort of a Tea Party guy, but you also say that he's an establishment guy. Is that sort of the person that the GOP and John Boehner was looking for?
Exactly. He's someone that can work with both factions in the party. He's seen as someone that the GOP establishment can work with, can get things done with. But at the same time, if you listen to his comments and things that he said, he's also looking to throw a bone to the Tea Party. I mean, they're going to be watching him very closely, and so he's got to make sure that he walks the line with both the Tea Party and the establishment going forward. This is going to be no easy task for him.
Absolutely. And businesses are, of course, very concerned about the potential of another government shutdown or just simply gridlock in Washington. Big business has thrown a lot of money to try to defeat Tea Party candidates within the Republican primaries. When you look at him, is there now an increased risk that we might be seeing either a government shutdown or simply no action from the Congress?
We won't see much action, particularly as we move into the rest of the legislative season. However, the government does need, the Congress is going to need to fund the government when the new fiscal year begins in October. But rest assured, the Republicans have learned their lesson from the last shutdown. They took the brunt of the responsibility for that. And with the midterm elections in November, the last thing that the Congress wants, particularly the Republicans, is a rehashing of a government shutdown where they can be blamed for that.
Well, they took the brunt of it. Yeah, they took the brunt of it from a sort of a whole holistic view, but the Tea Party was very supportive of it. And the question is he going to be beholden to the Tea Party constituency or the general constituency as the majority leader?
Well, again, I think the politics are going to play the huge role in this because you've got the midterm elections. And keep in mind, the Senate still hangs in the balance.
That's right.
So if Republicans want to take control of the Senate, trust me, the last thing they want is a government shutdown. Because if we get a government shutdown, they can kiss the Senate goodbye.
Yeah, they don't want to grab the defeat from the jaws of victory on this case.
Exactly.
With the Senate. Regarding
Very
real
well
quickly
said.
about immigration reform. Immigration also at the top of the list of many businesses. Some say that was reason Eric Cantor lost. Some question that. Where does McCarthy fit in?
I don't think we're going to see immigration at all for the remainder of the legislative year, and it's very interesting because yesterday there was an interview with conservative radio host Laura Ingraham and Congressman Labrador, where she was actually trying to push him to sign a pledge for no immigration. So I think this again is going to be a very tough issue, and I think if you look at Eric Cantor. And whether or not he lost his election because of immigration, I don't think this is an issue that Republicans are going to want to touch with a 10-foot pole.
And I wish
whether we think it's an issue that needs to be tackled, I just don't think we're going to see it for the remainder of the year.
And I wish they would stop with these pledges. Just govern and legislate, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. Eric Ham with Global Political Solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Turning now to the economy, weekly jobless numbers showing some improvement. Initial claims for state unemployment benefits dropping 6,000 to a seasonally adjusted 312,000 last week. That wasn't enough, however, to have much of an impact on stocks. A relatively mild day on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average climbing 1368 to 16,920. The S&P 500 up 2 and change. And the Nasdaq pulling back 351. Taking a look at some of the stocks we're watching today, Google says it's pledging $50 million to organizations that encourage young women's interest in coding. The company says there are too few women working in computer science, and it's hoping to change that. Google up 433. Twitter says it is buying Snappy TV. The video platform allows TV networks the ability to edit, share, and archive live video and TV programming. Twitter up 16 cents. And eBay says it is launching eBay Valet, a new app to make it easier for users to sell items online. The app allows eBay to post listings and ship the items, but it will also take a 30% commission for use of the service. eBay down 6 cents. Taking a look at commodities, gold up to $1,216 and oil up 66 cents to 106.63. For more on the economy and how long the Fed will keep interest rates unchanged, fixed income strategist and Lord Abbett partner Zane Brown is back here on Arisexchange. Zane, thank you.
You bet. Great to be here. Thank you.
Let's start with the idea of inflation and what the Fed basically is saying about inflation and where you think inflation is going and the risk that the bond market and the equity markets face.
Well, certainly they're not at all concerned about inflation. They're forecasting inflation to be very low this year, very low next year, and not to get to 2% until a couple of years from now. And that's really at odds with the CPI number that we got earlier this week, which was 2.1%. So certainly their preferred number is personal consumption expenditures, and that core number. And last month, that was at 1.4%. So they may have some room. But if that number comes in close to 2%, despite what Janet Yellen said, investors are going to be concerned.
And there's a difference between the government inflation numbers and the real inflation numbers. And I'm wondering, when you're the Fed and when you're looking at interest rates, how much they have the real inflation numbers, the price we pay for food, the price we pay for gasoline, et cetera, how much that is in their head.
Well, as unfair as it is, they're not going to focus on a headline number that includes what's most concerning to most consumers, and that is that which includes food and fuel. Instead, they're going to focus on core. They've always focused on core, and that's going to be the number that drives the markets.
And so what are the bond markets right now forecasting when it comes to interest rates and what the Fed might do? Are they aligned with the Fed thinking, or is there some daylight here?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that, because there was an expectation prior to Janet Yellen speaking yesterday that she might have her Kerry moment. The Bank of England, whenever they surprised investors and said, hey, we might see interest rates rise before you expect.
She did that once before.
Yes,
and now she kind of went back into perfecting the model of, and we said, a lot of people are saying this, speaking a lot of words and not saying much.
It's good that we learn from our mistakes, especially if we're going to speak and be as powerful as she is. But it was interesting because Fed funds futures declined a little bit after she she spoke, meaning that interest rates, they were expecting a little bit more aggressive Fed in the middle of next year and the end of next year until she spoke, and then they adjusted a little bit, calmed down somewhat.
And also, they have sort of dialed back their GDP numbers and economic growth numbers, haven't they?
Well, they have dialed them back for this year, but it's interesting. Next year, they're still at 3 to 3.2%. And if we get that level of growth, I think we'd suggest that inflation could be a problem next year. And of course, investors will anticipate that.
What is the key indicator you look at for inflation? Is it tied to wages?
Well, I think it will be the PCE core number in terms of pure inflation. But a precursor to that is going to be the amount of lending that's going on and the number of jobs. And those are going to be two kind of early indicators that are going to be key focal points for the Fed. They have been, they always will be.
What is the interest rate level then that was comfortable now for the economy, you think? If the Fed was to start moving in the next 12 months or so, where would we look at that's sort of comfortable that the equity markets will be okay with, the bond markets will be okay
Well,
with?
I think that the market's not anticipating that the Fed is going to get up to 1% in 2015. They're looking for maybe 25 to 50 basis points, but certainly not a great deal more than that. Anything stronger than that on the part of the Fed would either indicate a lot stronger economy, which would be good for bonds, or a much more aggressive Fed than needs to be right now.
And is there anything in the geopolitical environment that the Fed looks at here and says maybe we need to hold off?
Well, in the past, they haven't had much concern for what's going on in other countries. But if, for instance, ISIS were to take over Baghdad, that would be a game changer. That would cause inflation, and that would cause a real reduction in growth as oil goes to 125.
And then they have a tough part because a reduction in growth, you now hike interest rates to challenge inflation. You get into a stagnation situation.
Big problem for the Fed, big problem for a lot of investors were that to happen.
Okay, Zane Brown, thank you so much from Lord Abbott.
Great, thank you.
Coming up, how the violence in Iraq is about to hit your pocketbook. You're watching Arisexchange.
If I was building my own news network, first thing I think I'd want high-quality reporters, very educated, intelligent people.
Hello, I'm Francesca Maxime.
I'm Julian Phillips.
I'm Wendy Gillette.
I'm Sophia Song-Hai.
I'm Gary Anthony Ramsey. Thank you for joining us here in New York City.
I would like to see more people of color represented in high positions in media.
We've got world-class journalists, veteran journalists who have been in this industry for decades, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well.
People need to understand the problems that are going on in the community are much closer than we actually think they are.
Kayla Phillips is one of the shoppers who is suing Barney's, and she is here with her attorney. What is it that you want from them?
Not to judge every African-American person that comes in their store.
Welcome back to Arisexchange. As the crisis in Iraq continues to unfold, President Obama met with his security advisors to review the situation. After the meeting, he spoke about the U.S. response to the threat ISIS poses to the Iraqi people, to the region, and to U.S. interests. Here's some of what the president had to say.
And going forward, we will be prepared to take targeted and precise military action if and when we determine that the situation on the ground requires it. If we do, I will consult closely with Congress and leaders in Iraq and in the region. I want to emphasize, though, that the best and most effective response to a threat like ISIL will ultimately involve partnerships where local forces, like Iraqis, take the lead.
Meantime, the violence in Iraq is pushing up U.S. gas prices. Typically, the cost of gasoline falls in the weeks following Memorial Day. But this year, it's already up 6 cents a gallon, largely because energy traders are worried about the potential loss of production from Iraq's southern oil fields. Oil analyst Tom Klaza follows the prices at GasBuddy.com.
Fighting spreads to Baghdad, and then it threatens that region. Then it would threaten exports. And the world, despite U.S. growth in production, the world is very delicately balanced right now in terms of crude oil supply and demand.
To talk with us now more about the impact of Iraqi crisis is Ivan Eland. He is the director of the Center on Peace and Liberty at the Independent Institute. Ivan, welcome back to Arisexchange.
Thanks, Andrew.
So first, what the president did today and had to say. He is sending Secretary of State Kerry to the region. Is it a little too little, a little too late for the secretary to be going?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a good idea, and I think we can get into a hysterical, frame of mind. ISIS is only one of the groups that's fighting in the Sunnis, and I think Kerry can help maybe put pressure on this Shia regime to either be more inclusive, which I think is kind of expecting too much, or to shore up their defenses. And I think that, this idea that the Sunnis are going to take Baghdad very easily or march into the southern oil fields, I think, the market is scared of that. But usually the market goes on emotion for a while, and then when the reality hits that the Sunni militias are very strong, they were during the period of U.S. occupation, I think they're going to push back. Now, that doesn't mean there's not going to be a civil war in Iraq, but this ISIS group, the way they behaved in Syria is that they didn't really want to fight the Syrian government and dissipate their forces. They let the other opposition groups do that. What they did was they took strategic things like oil facilities and that sort of thing so they can make money. And, of course, they also bribed their way to their victory so far by bribing Iraqi army commanders to have their men, take off their uniforms and run. So I think this group is fairly sophisticated, and they know they need money. So even if they capture areas, if there's not too much damage to the oil fields, and we don't know the extent of the damage to the refinery because there was fighting inside the refinery, but, of course, these guys know that they're not just out after wanton destruction. We sometimes think they're crazy, but and if they
they need the infrastructure.
Syria, they'll try to sell the oil and make money.
Yeah, they have a lot of money, and they need the infrastructure to generate money, whether it's oil, whether it's selling antiquities, or whether it's robbing banks, which apparently they're very good at.
Right. They have various funding streams, but one of them is oil. And as we know in the oil market, it doesn't matter why people are selling it or who's selling it. They can be very radical. As long as they're selling it into the market, eventually the price will fall. Come around and go back down.
Yeah, it seems like we're fine with it as long as we're getting the oil. Oil prices are going up. How much of this is pure speculation, though? Because the supplies have not been disrupted to that extent right now. And there is a basic concern that this is really a lot of speculation going on.
Well, I think it's almost purely speculation at this point, and that often happens. But as I say, if not too much capacity is destroyed, or if somebody else makes up the lost capacity, which also happens, we think of a cartel, but there's a lot of cheating. When the price goes up, other OPEC countries have an incentive to cheat and produce more oil than they're supposed to. So if the market produces more oil, we've dealt with a lot of losses in the past: the Iran-Iraq war, the Gulf War, et cetera.
Libya, a lot of oil cut off from Libya.
The oil market's fairly resilient over time.
So what is the next step here for the United States? Do you think that they're going to start talking to Iran, even maybe through a third-party proxy? Because the president's hands are really tied. The American public certainly doesn't want to go back marching into Iraq.
Well, I think there'll be more cooperation between Iran and the U.S. that meets the eye on this thing, because they both have an incentive to beat back this group. Which is really curious is that the U.S. policy in Syria is to help the Sunnis. Not necessarily this group, but the Sunnis go against the Shia government. And here, it's to help the Shia government against the Sunni group. So, U.S. policy is a bit inconsistent. But I think Iran and the U.S. in this case have an incentive to collaborate, and I'm hoping actually that they do that, because I think this is a slippery slope. Obama's now sent 300 advisors. That's how we started back in the slope in Vietnam, and Eisenhower did that, and it doesn't seem like many people. But then we have the stake in what happens there already, and we're sort of doubling down on it. So you never know when you can get sucked back into this thing.
A long way to go
and
before
I think that would be a mistake.
Okay, Ivan Eland, thank you so much, the director of the Center on Peace and Liberty at the Independent Institute. Thank you. Time now for our business ticker stories that are topping headlines across the nation. American Apparel has fired its controversial founder and CEO, Dov Charney. The retailer, known for its Made in America clothes, said Charney has been terminated for cause stemming from an ongoing investigation into alleged misconduct. Although American Apparel did not provide details, Charney has reportedly and repeatedly been targeted in sexual harassment lawsuits. For now, CFO John Luttrell has been appointed as the company's interim. CEO. Shell has filed for an IPO to spin off a pipeline subsidiary called Shell Midstream Partners. The subsidiary of the energy giant intends to list its units on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker SHLX. Shell expects to raise up to $750 million from the IPO. America's foremost bike manufacturer is introducing the first electric motorcycle. Harley-Davidson will unveil the new mystery motorcycle next week, then take several dozen riders on a 30-city tour to test drive the bikes and provide feedback. The Live Wire, as they're calling it, will be a slim, sporty bike that can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 4 seconds. You won't need to shift gears, and the engine is silent. No word yet on price or when the bike will go into production. And take a look at some of these stunning works of art. They are actually made from Excel spreadsheets. Gives you something to do in the office, huh? While most people use Excel for number calculations or data listings, one Japanese artist uses them to draw these elaborate Japanese motifs. He uses the auto shape feature in Excel that allows users to embed custom-shaped objects into spreadsheets. Each of his pieces are studded with countless auto shapes, carefully positioned into intricate patterns and colors. Most accountants probably cannot do that with their Excel spreadsheets. Ahead, when your multi-million-dollar bonus isn't big enough for you, our favorite person of the day is next here on Arisexchange.
One of my favorite moments on the show was interviewing the author Taya Selassie. She wrote the New York Times bestseller Ghana Must Go, and she actually coined the phrase Afropolitan. And I feel like in part what this show speaks to is the Afropolitan audience. They're African, they're traveled, they're cosmopolitan, they're interested in the diaspora. That's what we deliver here, and Taya in many ways was the perfect embodiment of what I want our viewer to represent.
Is this an example of the regulatory police state? Almost all of us would agree drunk drivers should be stopped. But police may have crossed the line in a suburb of Cleveland. Douglas Odelke routinely stood by the side of the road with a sign warning drivers of a police checkpoint. The sign read, "Checkpoint ahead, turn now." Well, police in Parma, Ohio gave him a citation for, quote, interfering with official business after he refused to take the sign down. Odelke is refusing to pay the fine and is claiming the police have violated his First Amendment rights. Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today, it is a 35-year-old mortgage trader who is suing Goldman Sachs because he doesn't think his $8.25 million bonus was big enough. According to Business Insider, Deeb Salem told his mom that he was expecting a $13 million bonus for 2010, but only got $8.25 million. The year before, Salem got a $15 million bonus. He didn't complain about that one. He took this case to arbitration, claiming that he was punished because he wrote a glowing self-evaluation about his brilliant strategy in trading mortgages. The arbitration panel rejected his claim, and Goldman Sachs called it utterly ridiculous. He got $8.25 million. He is now suing in court and now wants $15.5 million. In 2011, by the way, he quit Goldman Sachs because he only received a $3 million bonus. Yeah, tough break. And so Deeb Salem is our favorite person of the day. Coming up, who is watching from above? The story of hackers and drones. You're watching Arisexchange.
Looking at mainstream news stations where only you have a very small minority of people of color being newscasters and actually having prominent roles in the media.
In a newsroom in the United States, maybe 10% of decision makers come from communities of diversity. That's not right.
Well, diversity is important because the more complete the news is, the more accurate a picture you're getting of the world, and the more you can form an accurate opinion of things.
The vision here is not just to tell the main stories of the day, but to tell the news that other organizations don't tell, and tell it in a way that people like me, people that look like me, that look like you, are interested in.
Arise News.
Arise News.
Arise News.
Arise News. Arise News, every culture, every angle.
It's one of the latest tools to help hackers invade your privacy and steal valuable information. Drones, unmanned aerial devices that hover and obtain data without you even knowing it. Believe it or not, hackers are now using this technology advancement to collect your passwords and other secure data from your cell phones, even while you are using them. Cybersecurity expert and Berkeley Veritronics Systems CEO, Scott Schober, is here to talk to us about drones. You know, there's a whole bunch of communications and media coverage about drones.
Yes.
And I didn't, you know, I thought maybe your neighbors would want to spy on you a little bit, but now the criminal enterprise, hackers getting into it. How are they doing this?
Oh, what they're doing is they're coupling the drones with hardware, and what they're doing is flying overhead some unsuspecting individual who might be on their mobile phone. If they don't have it secure, what they could do then is scarf your passwords or other private information.
And we have a drone here, and then we're going to fly around a little bit. How does that work? I mean, what technology are they using to collect all this information?
Good point. Most of the drones, these are non-military drones, are controlled by Wi-Fi.
And they're inexpensive, by the way. They're a few $100s.
A couple $100s to maybe a little more than $1,000. So any hobbyist could get it that's got a little bit of a techie background, in no time could learn to fly them and hover over people.
And then does it collect the information and then beam the information somewhere else for people to get to?
Exactly. You control it like you would an airplane. It's 2.4 gigahertz like a hobbyist would, these remote control planes, and then a 5 gigahertz video link back so you can send the data down.
This really shouldn't surprise people because we've seen the stories where you can drive around in a car with an antenna and basically collect information off people's Wi-Fi accounts. So why not do it from the air? But I imagine it's much more effective when you're in the air. You can reach more.
Sure, and you can even follow people. You could look at somebody's MAC address on their phone, and now you could set it up so it'll actually follow a person. They get in their car, go down the road, go to the office, wherever it is. So it's a good way to spy on people, steal their private information, their passwords, whatever else you need to do.
Okay, so how do you protect yourself from the evil flying above you?
Yeah, excellent. Number one, I always recommend to people, keep your Wi-Fi off if you're not using it. They're not going to...
You could turn your Wi-Fi off.
Sure, yeah. You could simply turn the Wi-Fi off. If you have an iPhone, it's just simple slide a switch there, and that way you're not transmitting or receiving it. They can't control or pull any information off of your phone.
And people should know when you're not there in your, let's say you have a Wi-Fi in your apartment, they can still reverse into your computer, can't they?
Sure, yeah, because it's got packets that are transmitting back and forth. They can hone in on that and then tap in and cause a problem.
Okay, so close down your Wi-Fi.
Shut your Wi-Fi off, exactly.
Anything else that people need to be doing?
Listen, it sounds crazy. Drones have a unique pitch just from the props that are
We could fly one, by the way.
Yeah.
Craig, if you want to give it a shot, we could hear it.
And give us a haircut even, maybe, right? But you notice the pitch on it? As it approaches you from high up, you can hear the change in sound and easily get it.
So now, as of... Fortunately, I remember what I'm going to ask you. Right now, you cannot legally fly these for commercial purposes.
Correct, yes. You cannot. And in fact, they're still trying to decide on what they're going to do next September 2015. They're going to be making some rulings on this. What is legal, what's not legal, commercial, as well as civilian. Right now, you can go up about 400 feet and not cause too much havoc unless you're near an airport or other secure facilities.
But there's other purposes as well. I mean, police are probably using this as well. Now, this one has what looks like a camera on it.
Yeah, it's got a camera on it, so it can actually hone in on a subject with a gyroscope and a stabilizer.
Because it's not just people having their Wi-Fi technology stolen. This is really a tool that people can steal video, could take video of, for example.
Yeah, if you think about media, TV, sporting events, imagine it flying into a large stadium and looking at information or looking at people and specifics like that. That could be certainly compromising and dangerous.
How big is this industry getting right now?
Oh, huge, huge. It's grown from a few thousand drones. Now there's tens of thousands. In fact, there's more, from a military standpoint, there's more drones up there flying unmanned than manned. So it's taken off.
Why all of a sudden the explosion in technology? Because there was a day where we would call these remote-controlled airplanes, which have been around forever.
The big difference is cost has gone significantly down, where you and I can all afford these now, and you can couple them with cameras and technology.
Because cameras are so much lighter weight.
Lighter, smaller. It's high definition. You can do anything.
So what do you think the government should do here? And we have only about 20 seconds left.
They got to step it up, and they got to put some regulations forth. We can't wait until the end of next year before they sit down and try to figure this out, especially
because there's FAA issues. You don't want it near airports.
You don't want this
privacy.
pressure on people's heads.
Yes, exactly, and it's happened.
Scott Schober, thank you so much. Friday on Arisexchange, we explore how pet care in the U.S. rakes in billions annually and why the dog training industry is on the rise. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Arisexchange. We will see you tomorrow.